Welcome, everyone. We're getting ready to start. Before we do, please take a moment to silence your cell phones. And also just note the exits from the room. So today's program has been years in the making. On our end, a diverse group of parents came together with the library to create programs that celebrate the qualities and characters of our community and also increase connection, understanding, and appreciation. This group became known as the Humans of New Canaan, referring to the project in 2010 by Brandon Stanton, who collected candid portraits and stories of people on the street in New York City. These parents and our team kicked off the first Humans of New Canaan season with a community photo project in which local photographer Dutch Doscher beautifully captured as many people from our town as possible. I encourage you to visit this pop-up show in the concourse before you leave today, as it will be coming down after this weekend. The photo project was joined by other humans-related writing and art workshops, all of which culminate in the very special program we have for you today. We are grateful and delighted to welcome Platon, the celebrated artist whose work is highly praised and coveted, a most special artist whose work actually furthers human rights and dignity around the world. Platon is one of the world's most renowned portrait photographers, having photographed more world leaders than anyone else in history, including 6 American presidents. He's photographed over 30 covers for Time magazine, including Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. He founded the People's Portfolio, a nonprofit foundation dedicated to celebrating emerging world leaders of human rights and civil rights. He's made films, done TED Talks, published books, most lately The Defenders, which is included in our collection. And now he's here to tell us about the importance of human connection in our digital and divided age. Please help me welcome Platon.
Thank you. All right, you look very nice from up here. I'm an expert in dealing with unfriendly people, but I feel okay today. I hope you like my suit. I actually wear this suit when I photograph heads of state and government, but have to be honest in front of you as I look at all your faces. At times of great uncertainty and you could say division, I'm reminded how beautiful it is that we all come together for culture. So today I'm wearing this suit out of respect to you, so give yourselves a round of applause, please. You're much better than a world leader. All right. So here we are together, but we're in a technological trance. Here we are together, but we're divided by tribalism. Here we are together, but we're distracted by mass myths. We've been separated by walls, windows, computer screens, borders, but we're secretly united in our hearts. Or we've argued and we've quarreled in the past, but now we know we've got a common bond, humanity. So why are we all here today? Maybe we're all looking for a key to unlock this political, economic, social, cultural paralysis. Maybe the answer is in a little word: empathy. Empathy is not just walking in someone's shoes or feeling someone's pain. Empathy is a secret ingredient for making a human connection. So I want you to open up your hearts, open up your minds. In times of confusion, we must not lose our capacity to dare to be kind to each other. So why is he showing us a picture of a beaten up old man with scars all over his face wearing a Nike hat? He's not. This is a picture of a 28-year-old lady, and she's homeless, and she lives on the streets of Moscow. Now, if you are homeless underneath Putin's grip, life is about as brutal as you could ever imagine. Her name is Lola. She's my friend. And when I took this picture, I said to her, Lola, if you ever had a wish for yourself, what would it be? And she said, I wish you happiness. I said, Lola, come on. If I ever met anyone in the world who deserves a wish for themselves, it's you. Don't waste it on me. And she said, but I'm not wasting a wish, because I humbly believe that if I'm kind to somebody, one day somebody will be kind to me. So be kind to me, Platon, she said. Tell all your friends in America about my story, but always speak truth to power. So with your permission, today, I'm going to take you on a little journey through power as I've been privileged to see it. And you could say it starts here. So I took this picture 24 minutes after a young Senator, Barack Obama, first announced he's going to run for president. And it marks the beginning of a very complicated journey all the way to the top of the power pyramid. I was in his office in Chicago, and I remember saying to him, I said, Senator, my mum thinks you're great, I said, and she hopes you make it to the White House, but all her friends and neighbors in London tell her that your chances of making it are very, very bad. He leaned forward and he said, tell your mama I said hi. It's so fantastically American, but it's not the whole Obama, is it? There's another side to Obama. There's this side. He's much more cautious than we all expected from that early charismatic presidential campaign. He actually likes to weigh up all the options in the room before he even thinks of making a decision. And I remember on his desk that day, there was a self-help book that he was reading, and it was called Be Quiet, Be Heard: How to Raise Delicate Issues with an Opponent and Still Find Common Ground. Essentially, how to compromise. Very interesting. So he gets elected, and I get invited to the White House to do this. Now, this has got nothing to do with politics. This is a cultural moment in American history. We'd never had an African-American lady as our first lady before. So I don't know about you, but before a big meeting in your life, maybe in your personal life or professional life, you know, a big event, you'll get nervous because you want it to go well. You're invested in it. You hope everybody's happy with the event. What are nerves? Let's think about it. Nerves are like a shot of adrenaline pumping through your veins. And what happens to you when you are nervous and pumped with adrenaline? It can make you socially clumsy. Know what I mean? So I was in this illustrious room in the White House, and there were chandeliers and beautiful old paintings, and she was in the middle of this big group of people, all these experts making her look perfect. Hair and makeup artists, there was a fashion stylist fixing her watch, and I picked up my camera, and in my clumsiness, I shouted out, "Right, my love, I want your soul. Give it to me." Silence in the room. Hairdresser drops his hairspray in shock. And this look comes over her face as I take the picture. The eyebrow raises as if to say, "How dare you?" But I quite like it at the same time. And then I realized what I just said. I said, my goodness me. I said, I'm an Englishman. And in England, we invented being polite. They do it better in New Canaan now, but we invented it. And here I am in the White House calling you my love and demanding your soul. And you're the First Lady. Please forgive my atrocities. She stands up, gives me a hug, and whispers in my ear, Platon, when all is said and done, I'm just Michelle. Okay, do we have any Texans in the room? Anyone here from Texas? Okay, no one here today. No one's owning up. Maybe one. Are you from Texas? You're very brave to own up. All right, so I'm not picking on you, but I'm based in New York, where America's media is traditionally based. And all those editors of all those big newspapers and media institutions always said to me, don't mess with Texans, they're really scary. They would always say that. I've actually got a lot of great friends in Texas. I love Texans. And I actually got on very well with this one. I think we should give him a round of applause for service to his country in the Second World War for fighting Nazi Germany. Let's rise above all political divisions at this time in our life. Thank you. So, as I say, I got on very well with him. I took this picture when his son, W. Bush, was in the White House. And his team, when I photographed him, he had a very cheeky sense of humor. In fact, he spent most of his time complaining what a bully Margaret Thatcher was, which I thought was brilliant. But it turns out Bush Sr. was a massive Winston Churchill fan. So this is his private tribute to Winston Churchill, V for Victory, at the end of the Second World War. But when I released this on the cover of a magazine, which was very famous at the time, the day it came out, I suddenly got a little nervous. I wonder what W. Bush's White House administration is going to make of Daddy Bush flipping a peace sign on the cover of a magazine. So within minutes of this coming out, I received an email from one of W's chief political advisors. And I've got to be honest in front of you, in those days, this particular advisor, who shall remain nameless, had one of the scariest reputations on Capitol Hill. And if I could be a bit naughty in front of you, I brought the email to read to you. Look, friends, since COVID, no one gives a shit. Okay, are you ready? Here we go. Dear Mr. Platon, congratulations on a cover of a magazine with cross-generational appeal. George Bush's 2 upraised fingers may represent a victory sign or a peace sign, depending on which side of the Second World War the reader was born. However, he says, my 3-year-old daughter had a different take. Upon glimpsing the cover of the magazine from her seat at the front of the grocery cart, she exclaimed happily, "Daddy, look, that man's singing Little Bunny Foo-Foo." Look, everyone, we've all got our own opinion. This is called freedom of speech. Even the kiddies. This is him in his favorite chair. And this is the son. So they all told me I'm very lucky to get W, because he's notoriously camera shy. So I took this picture a few weeks after he left office. And his team told me that he's chilling out now, they said. He's a great guy. You'll have a great time with him. You might even chop some wood on his ranch. You'll shoot some pool with him. It will be like hanging out with John Wayne. So I was excited. So I went to his office in Dallas, and I waited. And the swing doors open, and in walks W. And within 2 seconds, I realized this is not going to be fun at all. The first thing that happens is he comes up to me with 2 fingers and aggressively pointed into my chest. And he said, "You better be photographing a guy who's happy and not some kind of snarler. Get it?" Oh my goodness me. Now, what on earth is going on there? Now, I've got no right to speak for any of my sitters unless they ask me to. So all I can do is just give you my take, as I happen to be in the room. Now, does this mean he's a bully? I don't think so. What I think was happening is something completely different. I call it a transference of power. You see, now he's left the White House. He has something he did not have before. Time. Time to reflect. Time to think about his legacy. What did he get right? What did he get wrong? And every former American president I've had the great privilege to work with, they've all gone through this often painful process of reflection. And I bet all of you, when your time is done, you will also look back at your life and you will say to yourself, how did I do? A time when I could have made great change in the world. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? I suspect he was going through this process the very day I was to photograph him. And the last thing he wanted was to be captured in that moment of vulnerability forevermore. He wanted to be seen as a happy-go-lucky guy. So what does he do? In every single frame, he insists on this big, cheesy, goofy smile, and I could not shake it. But sometimes the mask tells us more about the truth than the truth does. Okay. Oh, I hope you had some whiskey for breakfast or lunch after this story. So he was my first ever president, and many people in politics in America wish he was my last president. Many years ago, I was called into an office of a magazine in New York called Esquire, and they said, "Right, young man, we are going to give you the biggest break we've ever given a young upstart photographer. It's the most important cover story of our 80-year history. It's the most powerful man in the world, the president, and it's his last official portrait as president before he leaves office, and we are giving it to you." "Wow," I said. "Well, that is amazing." And they said, "Not really, because you were not our first choice." They said, "You're our fourth choice. But all the others are out of town, so unfortunately for us, we have to give it to you." I said, "I don't give a shit. I ain't got no pride. Give me the bloody job." So here's to the hustlers in the room. So then they said, "Right, young man, we've looked at your work, and we're a little bit concerned," they said. "What we want here is a nice, elegant, dignified, head and shoulders portrait of our president. You know, like hand on the chin, looking off into the horizons, very noble. But we've noticed that when you take pictures, you sometimes photograph people from a low angle with a distorted sense of perspective." They said, "For goodness sake, whatever you do, don't do that." So then they said, "We're going to give you 8 minutes to do the entire photo shoot, and we're going to close down a 200-room hotel for security where you will work." So about a week and a half later, I went to the hotel. I was very nervous. And as I'm setting up in the presidential suite, I hear cheers and screams outside on the street as the motorcade arrives. My heart's pounding, and once again, nerves and recklessness and clumsiness is kicking in. I'm surrounded by Secret Service agents who are watching every move I make as I set up my cameras. And if you've ever seen the movie The Matrix, it's like a scene from The Matrix, because these guys are all clones of each other. They've all got the dark, mean-looking sunglasses. They've all got the wiggly wire going into their earpiece, attached to the walkie-talkie, attached. They've got gun in the holster and a sniffer dogs. So one of these guys, I think, is new on the job, because he's a little over-enthusiastic. And he insists on sharing with me everything he's hearing through his earpiece about security protocol. So he suddenly jumps in front of me and he says, "Big news. The president is in the building." My heart starts pounding, and he says, "Wait, very important security updates. The president is having a Diet Coke break. He's finishing his Diet Coke, and he'll be in 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8. By the time the doors open, after this insane power build-up, I'm sure I heard choirs singing, I saw doves flying out the president's back. It was like meeting Elvis in Vegas. So, I did what I promised I would do. And for 7.5 minutes, I took all those elegant portraits. And then I had a bit of a moment. And have you ever had a bit of a moment? When time stands still and you talk to yourself and you say, "Come on, let's be honest, I'm a bit of an imposter." I said to myself, it's a miracle that I got this far. I'm standing in front of the most powerful man in the world. And this is fluke. I'll never get another chance again to be in this position, so I might as well take the picture I really want to take. What have I got to lose? Sometimes in life, we've got to roll the dice. We've got to place all bets on ourselves for better or worse and dare to be authentic. So I had maybe 15 seconds left before the White House administration is going to close the photo shoot. And I picked up my camera, and to the horror of my assistants, I put on the wide-angle lens. And to get his attention, I shouted out, "Mr. President, will you show me the love?" Silence in the room. I think it was John Podesta, his chief of staff, stepped forward and he said, "Mr. President, whatever you do, do not show him the love." We've had enough love in this administration, Mr. President. Thank you so much. And then Clinton says, shut up, I know what he means," puts his hands on his knees and gives charisma, and I caught it on film. So, Thank you very much. Here's to charisma. So about a week and a half later, I hand in this picture at the bottom of the pile of all those nice, elegant portraits that I'd taken, and I quickly left Esquire's offices because I was terrified. So about 4 months went by. Radio silence in the media. I didn't see my picture on the cover of Esquire magazine. I started to get paranoid. Friends, have you ever felt the dark cloud of failure creeping over you? I started to think, well, maybe they didn't like my pictures, so they've done a reshoot with a much better photographer than me, and that's coming out in a couple of months. Or maybe the White House complained about me to the magazine, so they've shut down the whole thing. So one day, I came home from work feeling so depressed, and I spoke to my lovely wife who's here. This is Rebecca. We're both from New Canaan. Can you stand up for a second? Just go on, stand up, because you put up with a lot. Give her a round of applause. She's an incredible artist, by the way, and she's about to blow up in the art world. She's doing extraordinary work about women's empowerment, and I'm very proud of her. So, okay, back to the story. Yeah, give her a round of applause for women's empowerment, please. Buy the pictures now while you can still afford it. Okay, so I came home and I said to her, I think you're married to a failure. I said, my big break's gone south. I feel it. I said, I'm too depressed to help get dinner ready tonight. Not that I ever normally would help, but particularly tonight I can't do it. I said, let's just order a takeout meal, comfort food, maybe noodles or something. So the noodles arrived, and we lived in Manhattan at the time. So then I said, I'm too depressed to even talk while we eat. Let's just watch TV. So I channel surfed while my wife was getting the coffee table ready with the knives and forks and all that. And I got to CNN around 9 o'clock, and Larry King came on. Do you remember Larry King? So Larry King stared at me through those 2 square TV sets for glasses that he always wore, and he says, viewers, tonight we're talking about this. And he holds up my picture on a leaked advance copy of Esquire magazine. He said, I just got my hands on this. No one has seen it. It's hot off the press. And he holds it up for the cameras and he says, viewers, this is disgusting, he said. He said, this is an outrage that we show our president in this lurid sexual way. And I've invited Bob Woodward from the Washington Post, who brought down Nixon to analyze the picture for the whole hour. So Bob Woodward comes on TV and he says, yes, Larry, I've been in the media all my life. I know how this works. He says, this picture is all about sex, and I think we should blame the photographer for everything. He said, let's break down the clues. He said, the first clue is that the hands are big to grab you, he said. The next clue is the face is smiling as if to say, I got away with it. The next clue, he said, is a very important one, Larry. The legs are spread apart. But he said, Larry, the most important clue in this picture is the tie, because the tie is an arrow. As the noodles fell out of my mouth, I turned to my wife for reassurance, the way every failed male politician does in a sex scandal. And she calmly looked back at me across the sofa and she says, there goes your green card application. All right, let's move on. Oh, everybody calm down. Everybody just calm down. What can I tell you about Donald Trump? He's one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met. I took this picture about 22 years ago, long before he ever announced or thought that he might run for president. Now, I took it in Trump Tower in New York, and he walked in the room, and he was very charming, and he was very charismatic, and I said to him, Donald, let's be human with each other. I said, we've all followed your career. No one can doubt it's an extraordinary career path you've had, but there's always something about you. There's always an air of tension and controversy about things you say and do in public, and I'm sure it's intentional on your part, but it feels to me as if you're always in the middle of an emotional storm. I said, personally, I couldn't live with that constant friction in my life, So I want to know how you weather the storm. He calmly looks at me and he says, I am the storm. 22 years later, I was invited to Mar-a-Lago to take another picture of Donald Trump, just 2 days after his recent historic election victory, as he claims ultimate power in the world. This was to be Time Person of the Year, the cover of the magazine. So Mar-a-Lago is one of the most opulent places I've ever seen in my life. It's half Citizen Kane, half Versailles Palace. Now, the old bombastic Trump logo has now morphed into an elegant Trump coat of arms. But there's still touches of the old Trump. The light switches, I noticed, are painted gold. So I wait while we're setting up, and one of his team comes in, his new chief of staff, and she expressed to us a problem that he's just been called away on a big emergency meeting about something called tariffs. So we would be delayed, so I'd have to wait. He's literally forming his cabinet around us that day. So I wait, and I wait. And while I'm waiting in this illustrious room, they're playing me music. Every single song is very familiar to me. We all know these songs. We all grew up listening to these pop songs. And I kept thinking to myself, well, it feels more like I'm in a diner than in, the illustrious powerhouse of the world. Who chose these songs? What have they all got in common? Very strange combination. Eventually, he walks in the room. And as before, he was very charming. He was very charismatic. And I said, Mr. President, I'd like to ask you about the music I've been listening to. And he said, oh, that's my personal playlist. And I asked them to play it for you. I said, dude, I've been here 5-6 hours. That's a long playlist. He said, there's 2,000 songs on my playlist. So I said, Mr. President, what made you choose those particular songs then? He said, each song tells a story, our story. Then a new song comes on because the playlist is still playing. And as he sits in front of my camera, he takes on the character of the song. He almost acts it out. The song is by Elvis Presley, and it's called Suspicious Minds. And this happened. Then a new song came on, a very different vibe. The new song was much more joyful. It was a song about victory, and it totally changed his mindset all over again. And he acted out the new song. The new song was by ABBA, and it was called The Winner Takes It All. And this happened. And then finally, another song came on that I hoped would create the moment I was searching for, the moment that captures him as he holds complete power and responsibility in the world. And the song is by Frank Sinatra. Can you guess what it is? It's My Way, yes. And this happened. This was Time Person of the Year cover. Now, some of us may laugh at Donald Trump because he's spending all his time creating a playlist. But I have never met another politician around the world who invests valuable time in setting a tone in a meeting that's about to happen, that's telling a story through popular culture. And what he's actually doing is mobilizing popular culture and sending it into battle. So this is baby Daniel. He's a refugee. He's the youngest refugee I've ever had the privilege to work with and photograph. This is Veronica. She's also a refugee. Isn't she beautiful? Veronica and baby Daniel are both from Ukraine, which brings me to this picture. So while we look at this picture, with your permission, I would like to pay tribute to all the brave people who fight for human rights and human freedom around the world, not just in Ukraine or Russia, but all around the world. Let's give them a big round of applause, please. So I was informed by the Russian Federation that this moment of history would happen in the halls of the Kremlin. So one cold day in December, I was picked up from my Moscow hotel room and driven through the streets of Moscow in a former KGB BMW. As we got to the gates, the agent who was driving suddenly put the brakes on, and he did a hard turn and then floored the gas pedal in the opposite direction, out of the streets of Moscow into a dark, bleak, Gothic forest. I thought I was going to get whacked. We arrived at the most sinister building I've ever seen in my life. It's his private residence, his private dacha in the middle of this forest. As I get out of the limo in the snow, I'm confronted with a 2-story high security wall with snipers all the way along the top. And as I look down at my chest, I'm covered in orange dots. And then I feel a gun barrel pressed against the side of my head, and I'm led into the building at gunpoint. I'm led into a room that's historic. This is the room where they dissolved the Soviet Union many years ago, and now it's Putin's office. I waited for him, and he walks in with a giant entourage. He's got 2 translators constantly whispering into his ear. He's got a whole team of political advisors and a gang of bodyguards. I said to him, Mr. President, before we make history together, I've got a question I'd like to ask you. I said, I was brought up by my mum and dad listening to the music of the Beatles, and I want to know if you ever listened to the Beatles. They translate in his ear. There's some confusing looks amongst the entourage, and then his mood drops, and in Russian he orders the 2 translators and all his advisors out of the room immediately. The bodyguards stay. And then in Russian, he seems to shift his narrative, and he starts to speak English to me. And in perfect English, he says to me, "Oh my God, I love the Beatles." I said, "I didn't know you spoke English." He said, "I speak perfect English." So I said, "Okay, in that case, who's your favorite Beatle?" He said, "Paul." I said, "What's your favorite song? Is it Back in the USSR?" Yeah, he didn't like that one very much at all. And then he said, "No, my favorite song is Yesterday. Think about it." And I thought about it, and I realized I'm being sent a subliminal message about the old days of power and authority of the Soviet Union through a Paul McCartney song. Now, that connection I had with him allowed me in, and I ended up 1.5 inches away from his nose as I took this picture. I could feel his cold breath on my hand, and that's how I got the truth. The truth is that this is the cold face of power and authority in Russia, and then he performs power for me in his chair. Now I'd like to talk about an all-time hero, the late, great Muhammad Ali. I had the great honor to spend a day with him in his house. In fact, he was very ill when I took this picture. It turns out to be the last portrait he would do before he passed away. Now, he was so ill because of Parkinson's disease, and he had lost control of his once most powerful arms and fists. But when he felt me drape the American flag over his shoulders, he was compelled one last time to hold up his hands in that classic defiant boxing pose for me. His wife, who was standing to the side, burst into tears because she had not seen him be able to move his hands in this way for so long. At the end of the shoot, I was very moved. So I said to him, "Muhammad, you are the greatest. Teach me to be great. How can my generation be as great as your generation had to be during the civil rights era in America?" And he couldn't speak very well because of his illness. So I had to get close to him, and he whispered in my ear. He said, "I have a confession to make." "What is it?" I said. He said, "I wasn't as great as I said I was." "Holy shit," I said. "Well, that's the biggest confession I ever heard in my life. The whole world knows you as Ali the greatest." And then he said, "You misunderstand me." He said, "I'll tell you what was great, and it was not me. It was that people saw themselves in my struggle. that people saw themselves in my story. And then he turns it to me. And now I've got the great honor to turn it to you and say, if we can get people to see themselves in the stories that we share, then we could achieve greatness. But that greatness is never us personally. That's something much bigger called bridge building. A light bulb went off in my brain. So I took this picture, the last portrait of Muhammad Ali, not as a prize fighter or a champion, but as a compassionate bridge builder thinking about the underdog. Any Adele fans in the house? Yeah, we love Adele. The super fans will know that she's actually a mother. And when I did this picture, she had recently had this beautiful little baby boy. For all the working mothers in the room, or women who have been mothers through that difficult period, it's a really challenging period to have a time in your life when you have this dependent, beautiful little creature who's completely dependent on you, and yet you've also got to shift your mind away from nurturing to the tough business world. She didn't want to leave her baby at home to do this big photo shoot, so she brought her baby with her. And while we're on set, she has the baby on her lap, but she couldn't really concentrate because of the distraction. So gently, just for about 15 seconds, she places the baby between us while she's sitting in front of my camera, so she can just look straight at the camera for a few moments. And as I'm focusing on her eyelash, she's trying to pose as a pop star, suddenly her baby starts to squeeze her feet. He squeezes her ankle with his fingers, and as she feels the pressure on her foot, her face completely transforms. This is the soul of a young mother. All right, George is gorgeous and worth every penny, let's be honest. So I was with him in his garden in Hollywood one day, and I said, George, you are one of the greatest celebrities in history. I said, tell me about the times we're living in. And he said, oh, we're living in extraordinary times. You've got more information than you've ever had before, more connectivity than ever before, and yet somehow we seem to know less. You want to get the news today, you're probably going to go to a source online that confirms what you already believe. And the danger is that we are now all trapped in our own echo chamber. And that magical thing, that beautiful thing, called a shared experience, where we all come into a central space and respectfully debate our differences, that's rapidly disappearing. But I'm on this stage, and I'm looking at you. And what I think I'm looking at is that beautiful thing called a shared experience. I bet you're all different types of people, and I bet you all believe in different things. But you're all present, you all showed up to make friends, to be part of a community. That is a beautiful, amazing thing. So I think we should give our hosts today a big round of applause for creating this shared experience. This is what community is all about. Thank you very much. So I've worked recently with John Lithgow. You know the great actor, John Lithgow? And he said something amazing to me, because he studied the human condition all his life. And he said, good people do bad things. Bad people do good things. All of us are capable of both. This is Kim Kardashian. We think of her as part of a media circus of craziness. Actually, she was smart, calm. It was like being in the eye of a storm. And I remember saying to her, you're so rich and successful. What's the most valuable thing you have? And she said, trust. This is Jacob Elordi, the new heartthrob of our time. Actually, it sounds strange I'm saying that because he's playing Frankenstein at the moment in the cinemas, but watch out for him. He's going to be the biggest movie star in the world. I said to him, what's the most important thing in your life? And he pointed to a lady standing at the back of this photo studio that day. There was a giant entourage there, and he said, that over there. So I said, well, what's that over there? I couldn't really see. And there's a lovely lady in the corner. And he said, "That's my mum." So I had, where's that lovely mum I was talking to earlier? Right, I was chatting to this lovely lady here. She's so cool. We love mums. Mothers are the matriarchs of society. So I think we should give all mums in the room a big round of applause, please. Come on. It's a hard job. All right, anyone know who this is? Yeah, it's always the ladies that come in first. You know, there's so much I can tell you about this shoot, a big celebrity shoot with David Beckham. Halfway through, in fact, I was told by his people that he's the sexiest man in the world now, you know. So I couldn't bear to look at him, so I asked him to turn around. It's just too much to cope with. But halfway through the shoot, he disappeared, and he went into his dressing room, and he was gone for ages. So his team said, "Look, time is money with David Beckham. Go in and bring him out. We've got work to do." So I went into his dressing room, and I saw something I will never, ever forget. There was a virtually naked David Beckham, and he's standing wearing nothing but a skinny tight pair of white front briefs, and he's standing in front of a full-length mirror with a whole set of spotlights hitting his extraordinary physique, and he's standing there quietly admiring the marvel of David Beckham. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm a straight guy and I'm very happily married, but I have never seen anything so beautiful in all my life. So I found myself standing next to him, like in awe, looking into his reflection. I said, "David, you're perfect." And he said, "I know." All right, this is the weirdest guy I ever met in my life. And that's all I'm going to say about it. All right, let's talk about technology. This is Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple. Look into his eyes. You can feel the discipline and power of that giant organization in his soul. This is a young man called Kevin Systrom. Kevin had never met anyone like me. He invented Instagram. And the day I was to photograph him, I didn't even know what Instagram was. So this is him desperately trying to show me what Instagram is on his outdated phone already. And now I'm on Instagram, so please follow me. All right, this is Jack Dorsey of Twitter. This is Reid Hoffman, who created LinkedIn. These guys invented YouTube. And I'm proud to say I am now a YouTuber. I've got my own channel, so we're making our own films. I'm down with all the teenagers, so start subscribing, please. All right, this is Bill Gates. You know who this is, right? This is Satya Nadella, the current boss of Microsoft, the champion of AI. And, oh, you know who this is. Right, so some people think he's leaning on a giant trophy of hubris. Actually, it's one of the rocket boosters from SpaceX. But Elon is a very interesting guy to talk to. He talked to me about the DNA and cell structure of a giant group of people. Could be a political party, could be an organization, could be a country. He said, zoom right in to the cell structure of that group of people. And if it's made up of individuals who are fighting against each other to work their way up the ladder of promotion, then that invincible, powerful group of people is about to be outsmarted, outperformed, and outmaneuvered by a brand new baby startup. A merry band of brothers and sisters who are working together because they have a common cause and a common goal. This is someone called Tristan Harris. You might not know him. He used to work at Google, and he quit to warn us about the dangers of social media and now AI. So when we did this picture in my New York studio, my 2 teenage kids were in the studio helping me out that day. And I said to him, Tristan, if you could look directly at my kids, I would like you to talk to them on behalf of the tech industry. Talk to them about all their friends and their generation. What would you like to say? He hesitated. He seemed to get very emotional, and he looked up at my daughter particularly, and he said, I'm sorry. He said, I'm sorry that the people who came before you were not more careful. He then went on to say, in the past, we have rewarded leaders in the tech industry for being sure, confident, determined and charismatic. Now we need to change course. Now we need to be unsure. We need to be humble. We need to be curious about these powerful technologies we're creating. This man faces a lot of challenges right now. When I went to meet him in his office in Facebook headquarters, I waited for him, and before he walked in, I noticed there was a poster he had on the wall, and in big red letters it said, "What would you do if you weren't afraid?" What would you do if you weren't afraid? That's one of the most powerful questions we'd ever ask ourselves. Would your life be different? Would your career path be different? Would the relationships in your life be different? And don't think for a moment I would dare stand in front of you as if I've got the answers, because if I'm honest, I've got to confess fear has played a part in my life. The irony is, when he walks in, he himself is terrified. He's terrified of having an honest character study made of him by me. So it's as if he never read the words to his own poster. When we look at the balance between good leadership and bad leadership in technology right now, I think there's a question we need to ask all our tech titans. Are they innovators driven by human empowerment and optimism? Or are they, on the other side, suspicious of our empowerment and they're trying to take advantage of our confusion? Maybe they're disruptors. There was one tech titan I was really interested in. It's very controversial. So much so, he's wanted for treason. And he's actually on the run, hiding somewhere in Russia. And his name is Edward Snowden. I thought it would be interesting to see if I could find him. So I spent 9 months trust building, trying to find a path of communication. And eventually, a handwritten envelope was delivered to my New York studio door. I opened it up and it said, "Mr. Platon, go to Hotel Metropole overlooking Red Square in Moscow. Go to Suite 311, and on this specific date at 12 o'clock noon, you will be contacted." This is James Bond shit, and I'm not cool. How do I get into Russia? No more visas. There was only one person I could ask for advice. It's a guy called Sergey, who is one of Putin's right-hand advisors, and I still had his mobile phone number programmed into my phone from back in the day, so I called him up. I said, "Sergey, I want to come back." He said, "Oh no, why should we let you back into our great country?" I said, "I can't tell you, it's a secret." He said, "That's ridiculous." I said, "Wait, if you let me back in to do what I secretly want to do, it's really going to piss off my own government," and he gave me a visa like that. So I went. I pretended I was Daniel Craig. And I followed the instructions exactly, and I went to the right hotel on the right day, and I waited. And at 12 o'clock noon, with military precision, there was a knock at the door. What's on the other side of that door? Is it a SWAT team? Is it the CIA or the new KGB? Or is it him? I nervously went to the door and opened it no wider than this, and this shadowy, diminutive figure slips through the door. He's got a backpack with his laptop in it, which he places at the base of the hotel bed. He's got a blazer 2 sizes too big, which he takes off. He rolls his shirt sleeves. His glasses broken, tilted to one side, hair scruffy, shoes worn. He sits on the edge of the hotel bed and looks down at the floor, not at me, and he whispers, "I'm Ed. I'm here. Let's begin." He begins an hour-long rant about his journey through the corridors of power, how gradually he gained access to information that he felt was morally unsound. This led him to become the biggest whistleblower in global history. I said to him, Tell me about loneliness. You must be lonely. You're living in complete isolation. The FBI and the CIA can't even find you. And he said, loneliness can be a terrifying thing, especially if you've been robbed of all the people that you love. But loneliness can also be an empowering thing, because when you're lonely, there is nothing but a wall of silence. Listen to the silence. You just might hear the voices of history talking to you. He falls back into the sofa and rubs his eyes, so I say, there's another question I have for you. I said, I want to ask you about moral compass. How do you know that what you did was right? Some of my friends think you're a hero. Some of my other friends think you're a villain. And he said, the line between right and wrong is not always bright. And all of us, at some point in our lives, will cross over that line. But what makes an honorable person is when you recognize you've crossed over and you do everything in your power to bring yourself back to the right side. He stands up, walks to the window, and looks out through the shadowy, imposing figure, through the net curtains of the shadowy, imposing figure of the Kremlin. And then something catches his eye. It's my good luck American flag draped over the edge of the sofa. 25 years ago, I wrapped a naked Pamela Anderson in that very same flag. There was no funny business going on that day, I promise you. But Pammy came to the shoot in the swinging 90s with a secret. You see, she was pregnant. She was 4 months pregnant, and the bump was beginning to show. And she didn't want anyone in the media to know she's going to be a mother. She wanted privacy. But she couldn't fit into any of the tight dresses they'd brought her that day for the photo shoot. So she panicked, and she said, help me hide my bump, but still make a positive statement about my love affair with America. I said, it's easy. Let's just wrap you in a big flag. Brilliant, she said. So we did it. It was a hit. They even used it for the USO poster to inspire American troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. Pammy gave me the flag at the end of the day. She said, it's your good luck flag. Keep it. Take it in your suitcase to all your big photo shoots. It might bring you the same luck it brought me. Well, it's the same flag draped over Muhammad Ali's shoulders. It's the same flag fallen out of my suitcase in a Moscow hotel room. Snowden sees it, picks it up, and says, this is interesting. And I felt a moment coming. So I invite him to sit against the white wall in the hotel room while he still holds the flag. And then I said, now I'm going to ask you the question that we all want to ask. Are you a patriot or are you a traitor? And he said, don't get bogged down with labels. Don't get bogged down with picking sides or picking teams. He said it's not about us versus them or even red versus blue. It's about us coming together to solve goals together. And what I did, he said, was not for my own benefit. I didn't ask for money. I took the information and I gave it back to the people. And the reason I did that was not to gain a label, but to give you back a choice about the country you want to live in. Click. Now, I'm not trying to sell you Snowden. I'm not trying to sell you anyone. I'm not clever enough to know whether what he did was right or wrong. That's for you to decide. But I do know this. I feel very blessed to live in a beautiful country like America. And despite the challenges we face, and there are many, and many people have been excluded, and many people will continue to be excluded, we still have something incredible called freedom of speech. And I think it's our duty to exercise that freedom because it helps us improve our society. This is Kobo Chi. He knows something about freedom of speech. He's from a forgotten country called Burma, ravaged by years of brutal civil war and a military dictatorship. When Kobo Chi was a student, he went on a demonstration with his friends, and they were singing songs about freedom. The military shot most of his friends and put Kobo Chi in prison for 25 years. Eventually released, he's living in exile on the run in a remote outpost in the mountains near the Thai border. I decided with my human rights organization to go and find him and to try and make a portrait of him that celebrates his strength rather than his weakness. So we became good friends. Kobo Chi actually wrote a great essay in my book that you may have seen out there called The Defenders. It was published last year, celebrating human rights defenders around the world. So in that essay, he talks about what it's like to have freedom taken away. His words are very powerful. And if I may, I'd like to read you some of his powerful words, something that we all should think about. I was placed in a tiny cell with no natural light. Reading, writing, and studying were all banned. I realized my captors wanted to kill my intelligence and my humanity. I was tortured, both mentally and physically, beaten, kicked, forced to stand for hours on end. When my feet were too swollen to support my body, I collapsed with exhaustion. They pulled me up by my ears. At times, I thought I would die. But I slowly came to realize there was a reason I stayed alive. This portrait of me has now been seen around the world, and that makes me proud. This portrait protects my dignity and encourages me to continue the hardships of fighting for justice, but above all, freedom of speech. Let's give Kobo Chi a round of applause, please, because he rocks. Kobo Chi wants us to talk about difficult things, not easy things, things like this. When I took this picture of P. Diddy, it represented bad boy musical swagger. Now it represents an absolute monster who abused his power in the media. This picture of Harvey Weinstein and his enabling brother is the same story but a different industry. So, with every dark swing in society, there is a powerful correction. And I'd now like to introduce you to two very powerful young women who stood for positive change. This is Pussy Riot. You probably know them as a hardcore feminist punk rock group who spoke truth to power against Putin's excessive nationalism. Consequently, they were sent to a Siberian prison for 2 years. But what happens if we remove those aggressive, colorful masks? You see something different. This is Nadia and Marsha after they're released from prison. Look at their faces. You can feel the price they paid for women's rights and LGBTQ rights in Russia. Now, during their trial before prison, in the courtroom, they were kept in a big cage as if they're wild animals for the world's media to see. Nadia, the woman with dark hair on this side, she's the founder of Pussy Riot. She kept scribbling handwritten notes on a scrappy piece of paper. Eventually, the judge asked her to stand and make her closing statement before sentencing. Nadia must have known she's about to go to jail. Nevertheless, she stood up in her cage, nervously looked down at her piece of paper, took a deep breath and read out from her notes. And what she said to the judge and to the world, I think, will go down as one of our generation's greatest speeches. She said, I wouldn't give people labels. There are no winners or losers here, injured parties or accused. We just need to make contact, to establish a dialogue and a joint search for truth, to seek wisdom together, to be philosophers together, rather than stigmatizing and labeling people. That is one of the worst things people can do. Nadia believes one of the worst things we could do is to judge each other. Maybe we should be less judgmental and more curious. When you look at one of my pictures, you might find yourself making judgments about these people. So what happens if I remove your capacity to do that, take away most of the face, leaving a tiny part of the face that you can't even recognize, but it might just be a window into soul, the eye. Whose eye is this? Is it someone you love? Someone you hate? It belongs to this man, Abbas, leader of the Palestinians. Look into his soul. What do you see on his face? What about this eye? Someone you love, someone you hate, belongs to this man. When I took this picture of Netanyahu, we were at the United Nations General Assembly together, surrounded by world leaders, and he was in performance mode. He kept whispering to me, "Platon, make me look good." But within a year of taking this picture, I'd take another one of Netanyahu under very different circumstances. 9 months after this, his father died. He loved his father. His father was his hero and champion. So he invited me to his home in Jerusalem to be the first person he would meet and to capture the moment he comes out of official mourning, facing a new world alone. This happened. Same white background, same suit, practically the same tie, different man. And I realized something. When he's vulnerable, he's volatile. Whose eye is this? Look into his eye. We're being asked to take sides. Are we on this side or are we on this side? Whose side are these kids on? I took this picture in one of the back alleyways in Jerusalem. A historic town, a historic place filled with different cultures and religions over years and years. We don't know which side these kids are on because they're in silhouette. But the big question is, maybe kids don't want to take sides. Maybe kids just want to be kids, to be free and play and have joy in their lives. Whose eye is this? Someone we love, someone we hate, someone my daughter loves, someone my wife loves, Harry Styles. What about this one? Someone I love, Prince. Let's give Prince a round of applause. He was pretty great too. All right, this is Putin's eye. He's always watching us. The eyes are watching us. But how do we use our eyes? Do we look or do we see? When you look at this picture, you might find yourself thinking about the politics of war. But when you get to know the lady in this picture, you get to know Jessica. Jessica holds the flag they draped over her husband's coffin. Draped over her husband's coffin, who had died a few weeks fighting for America in Iraq. I took this picture in her home. She has his wedding ring around her neck on a chain. Now, when you're killed in combat, the US military send your clothes and personal belongings back to family members in a big metal box. Jessica had just received the box a couple of days before this shoot and had not yet had the courage to open it. There it lay closed at the base of her bed in her bedroom. I said to her, maybe you should wear one of his t-shirts, one of his army t-shirts, as a tribute to him in the picture. She said, I would, but all his t-shirts are in the box. Maybe now, she said, it's time to face emotion. So we both walked into her bedroom. We both knelt at the base of her bed and opened a latch of the box. And as we lifted the lid, she starts to cry. And I felt ashamed of myself. For the first time in my life, I had put a photograph above the well-being of a person. And as I apologized for pushing her into this sensitive place, she said, you don't understand why I'm crying. I'm crying, she said, because I just realized they washed his clothes and I wanted to smell him again. Did you feel that? Did you feel that? If you felt that, then something beautiful just happened. We all came into this room defined by our differences. Men, women, old, young, black, white. Dare I say Democrats? Dare I say Republicans? Dare I say different religious groups or cultures? But we all felt that together. What we felt is compassion. Compassion for someone you've never even met. That's the power of human connection. And that's why we will not go down as the generation of connectivity that disconnected itself. And we will not trade in human, genuine experiences for artificial intelligence. No, it shall not be. I think we're going to rise up. I think we're going to rekindle the spirit of optimism. It seems to me they underestimated our love and respect for each other's humanity. Whose eye is this? Someone we love, someone we hate. It belongs to a man who was robbed of the power of human connection, but refused to be a cynic. And his name, Professor Stephen Hawking. Like Muhammad Ali, he was very ill when I took this picture, and like Ali, he died shortly after the photo shoot a few months later. He was so ill, his whole body had essentially shut down. There was only one muscle he could still use, underneath his eye. And his team of scientists built a sensor you can see attached to his glasses that picks up movement of that muscle. And with that movement, he moves a cursor over each letter of the alphabet on his laptop screen. He chooses a letter, builds a word, builds a sentence, and that's how he communicated to the world about humanity in space. At the end of the session, I said to him, "Professor, what an honor it is for me to photograph you. And I've seen how hard it is for you to communicate, but I want a favor. I want one word of wisdom from you. One word from you is going to be worth 1,000,000 words from anybody else." We waited. His nurse was concerned because she knew that even that muscle was now failing. And many things he tried to type were meaningless these days. Suddenly we hear beep, 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 beep. He's typing. We all leaned in to his laptop screen to see where the cursor's going to go, and it went to the letter W. Then the next letter, beep, 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 to the letter O. And then the final letter, beep, 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 back to the letter W. His nurse said, W-O-W, that's a mistake, I'm sure of it. And then I said, hold on a minute. That's not a mistake. He just typed the word wow. He just gave me a word my kids would use about the beauty and majesty of life. And isn't it amazing how the man who faces so much physical adversity still looks at the world through the eyes of wonder? At this point, his nurse says to me, he's exhausted. Let's rest his eyes, take off his glasses, take off his sensor, and put dark sunglasses to protect his irises. And then I saw it. A vision of a badass rock star of hope, and I took this picture. This is my tribute to a legend of our time, a man who believed that connection equals compassion. So I'm not going to leave you with an answer. I'm going to leave you with a question. Are we to be bystanders like moths dancing around somebody else's flame? Or are we to be upstanders and we light the darkness ourselves with our own torch of compassion? Because when there is light, we see each other as we really are, not as strangers or opponents, but as creative partners. And together, we earn the respect of history and transform chaos into a beautiful cosmos. Thank you for listening to me, and good luck to you. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Platon, wow.
Thank you.
Look at this. I don't even know what that was. I don't even know what to say. That was extraordinary.
That was 57 years.
I don't think I've ever heard anything like this or watched. So we're going to move to Q&A now, but before we do, I just want to say everybody in this room has to light up your Instagram, your YouTube, light up Elm Street Books. We have a copy of Platon's latest book, The Defenders, just outside. You can check it out, you can browse it, but my mistake, I did not have Elm Street Books here today with piles of books to sell, so maybe we have to have you back.
Happy to do it anytime, yeah.
Right?
Look,
with a pyramid of books, but please, I mean, this is what the world needs now. Platon.
Thank you so
We'll save
much.
the world.
Look,
Thank you.
this is a beautiful place.
Oh my gosh.
It's a beautiful community. This is the shortest journey I've ever had to do a talk. Normally I'm traveling literally around the world. It's 10 minutes away from our lovely home. But this is really important that, you know, it's not done by other people. This is you. You do this. You know, this only happens because you show up. This only happens because you've put this together. This whole institution here happened because people actually made it happen. So this is people power, alive and kicking, not cynicism, optimism. So I think that is an amazing thing.
Yeah, right on. Okay, do we have some questions today? Raise your hand. We're recording this, so I want to come to you and put the mic up to you so that the recording can capture your questions.
Be brave.
I was wondering, a lot of your subjects in your studio were at a table. And
Yeah.
the table is one that you chose for the photographing, and I was curious about that.
No one's ever asked me about that. That's really cool. So for a long time, okay, this is something you'll all understand. You know when you're making a human connection with someone. Let's assume you're at dinner and you're having a conversation that you are invested in. You're curious about your dinner partner's answers or questions or the debate or the connection you have. And when that happens, you're both probably leaning in. It gives you something to build on. Now, most of my subjects, when they walk in, it's kind of like their worst nightmare. They're going to the dentist. And you all know that feeling when you go to the dentist and you sit in the chair and you see the dentist press the button and the chair starts to go down, you know? You know the feeling. You're being robbed of all power you thought you had. It's kind of like that for my subjects. So I thought it would be very interesting to give them something that puts control back into their position. So by putting a table there between us, it allows us to meet halfway. The actual table that you see, I call it the Al Pacino table because years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I photographed Al and I wanted something earthy. He's a very earthy kind of guy. And so we got this table made with old beaten up wood to give it character because everything's so clinical in a photo studio. And it became the Al Pacino table, and now I travel with it. So we've got a special suitcase for the Al Pacino table and also the apple box that everyone sits on. And someone told me not that long ago that more world leaders have sat on that apple box than any chair in history, which is the most bizarre thing. Because it's just a box. It does have a little cushion on it, but that's as far as I'm prepared to go. You know. So the table is sort of symbolic as a neutral space between me and my sitters to help us find common ground together.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Patron. I'm a huge fan of you. I'm a photographer, professional photographer too. Also, I'm from Venezuela. I know you took a picture of Hugo Chavez.
Yeah.
So can you share with us a little history about that picture?
Yeah, you come from a very special country, and there's beautiful people in your country. So I have two stories about your country. The first one was Hugo Chavez. It was done the same day, actually, if I remember rightly, that I photographed Colonel Gaddafi and Netanyahu, the one that I showed earlier at the United Nations. And I would normally, at United Nations, at the General Assembly, what you have is, nearly 200 world leaders all walking around, rushing from meeting to meeting. They're all performing power in front of each other and the world's press. So no one's really being authentic, and no one has any time. I negotiated for maybe 9 months, maybe a year, with the bosses at the United Nations to let me in, to build a photo studio outside the green room where all the heads of state go to prepare their speech before they speak to the world. And eventually I got granted the biggest security pass any civilian's ever been given. So I could essentially approach every world leader directly and just say, excuse me, can I take your picture, right? So it turned into an old school street hustle. Now, at the beginning, no one would pose for me because, everyone's very nervous of this strange photographer at this place. But once I got one or two, then I noticed the power starts to shift. And everyone wants to be in the power club. And if now people are starting to sit for me, I started to get leaders, the word got out that they're all having their picture taken to document the times. And I started getting people coming up to my team saying, excuse me, we are from the government of so-and-so, and we haven't been asked to, and we would like to pencil in a time. We have 15 minutes tomorrow, could you pencil us in? And I remember my assistant at the time, it was her first day at work. She'd just joined. So all of a sudden, her first day is talking to heads of state and representatives of maybe 150 world leaders, penciling them in, trying to, organize a schedule. And it was like the photo yearbook of a high school. So most people would come and give me like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, sometimes more. At the time, President Medvedev was temporarily taken over from Putin, and because I had photographed his boss, you could say, his people said, we're going to shut down the whole area, and he wants you to have as much time as you need. So I had him for about an hour and a half, which was bizarre, which tells you a lot about how each country navigates. So all of a sudden, I heard Hugo Chavez was around. And everyone else, as I say, there was negotiation, and then there were timekeepers. Hugo Chavez storms in. He sits in front of my camera, and I took one frame. And I had 30 seconds to do it. It's the shortest photo shoot of my life. And it wasn't a struggle. You only need one frame. He was giving me Hugo Chavez on a plate. And he sensed that by then I was so warmed up and my senses were firing. My eyes were on fire during those days. So I knew I'm going to get it, and he responded accordingly. So he sits in front of the camera, gives me this look. I got it on film, and then he walks over there. And there was this flight of stairs going up to the green room. So he's surrounded, there's about 40 people from the delegation from Venezuela. So he leapt up the stairs, and he stood at the top, and I thought it's over, and then he turns round while everyone is surrounded here, including another 10 world leaders waiting in line to be photographed, and he goes, Platon! And then he walks in to give his speech. And I looked at my assistant, first day at work, and she said, I don't know, this is the craziest job I've ever had in my life. So years later, I would photograph Guaido. You know Guaido. So he was a very nice guy, and
This is the leader of the opposition.
He was
correct?
at the time the leader of the opposition, who was elected to be president, but Maduro wouldn't allow him to take position. So at the time, during Trump's first term, Trump was very supportive of Guaido. And if any of you remember the big speech, State of the Union, he invited Guaido to appear at the State of the Union as his special guest, which sent a very powerful message that at the time Trump wants to get rid of Maduro. And I remember when Guaido, at that time, it was the day before that State of the Union speech, so Guaido was in the States, and we had got to know each other at Davos. We had become friends. So he decided to come to my studio to have a portrait taken. And of course, the CIA were very nervous that he's going somewhere that might not be secure. My office and studio is in Soho, downtown in New York. So the CIA shut down the whole of downtown, so the special guest of Trump's State of the Union could come into my studio and have his portrait taken. And that was one of the first times they'd shut down the whole of Soho for a photo shoot for me. And now, unfortunately for all the shops, Christian Dior, Tiffany's, they all know now that when I'm doing a world leader, it's like, oh shit, Platon's doing another world leader. We're going to get no business for the next 4 hours. But that's the way it is. But he was the first one that did that. Yeah. So
Can we sneak in just one more, and then we'll leave time for people to come and chat up? Platon.
I guess this is kind of a personal question, but it's unusual to find someone who can find good in people on all sides, all kinds of people. Let's just say that you are the anti-polarist, and I wonder if there's a grounding that you can share with us. Where do you get that vision?
Well, I really think the key, and it took me a long time to find this, so I can't preach, because when I was a young gun, I was very opinionated, and I had preconceived ideas about everybody. And I started to find that what I'm actually doing by doing that is narrowing my powers of observation. Because if I go into a photo shoot and I've already made up my mind, then the bandwidth of discovery is much narrower. So I've learned through trial and error to keep broadening it, putting judgment aside, and focusing 100% on curiosity. Now, of course, I'm not naive. I know a lot of the dictators I've photographed, and business leaders even, have done terrible things to people. And some of my friends have even lost their lives for things they believed in. And a lot of the world leaders I've photographed, for instance, Gaddafi, I remember he killed a friend of mine who was an incredible photographer called Tim Hetherington, who was a war photographer. And he was covering the carnage Gaddafi was creating in Libya at the time. And Gaddafi targeted him specifically to shut down a channel of communication to the world. So I'm not naive, but my role is not to judge in the picture, to discover, and then turn to the world, and it will be history that will decide whether this person was good or bad. But my job is to hold up a mirror to society and say, whether it's comfortable or not, this is happening to us, we are part of this, and we need to have important discussions. And if we all just keep taking a side, we're not really ever understanding the problem. And in particular with dictators, for instance, many of them have charm. Many of them have charisma. And we like to think that's not the case. We paint them as two-dimensional dictatorial cartoons. But they are not always that cartoon. And if we underestimate them, we're always going to be surprised and caught by surprise that they actually became successful. So I think it's much more interesting to really understand who these people are so we can best have a proper debate. But it comes from one of you could say, the first big shoot I ever did. I was a hustler when I was a student, and I lied and I told everyone I was a professional when actually I'd never done a day's work in my life. And I remember going to lots of the magazines in London, trying to persuade people to give me a job. And one magazine, it was a film magazine, foolishly gave me a job. And they said, right, young man, we got a job, it's a cover story. And I was like, wow, so cool. I said, what, is it a famous person? They said, yeah. I said, wow, I'm on my way. And they said, it's an actor, and he's just made a breakout movie. There's even Oscar whispers. And they said, the movie is called Silence of the Lambs, and the actor is Anthony Hopkins. So I obviously hadn't seen the movie. Never been to a private screening in those days, so it was like early days for me. And I didn't even know who the actor was. So I said, well, I don't care. It's a famous person, you know. So the day before the shoot, I started to get a bit nervous. You know, this is when the bravado wears off and you realize, oh my God, I'm actually doing this. So I thought I should prepare. And I was living with my parents at the time. I was 19. And I was rehearsing the photo shoot in their downstairs living room. And I had my lenses set up on the kitchen table. And I had the chair there. I didn't have the Apple box yet in those days. So I had the chair and I had the light. And I was pretending to do light readings. And I was even rehearsing the handshake. I'd never met a famous person before. Do you curtsy? Do you bow? How does it work? I didn't know. So I would like, how do you do, sir? No, sir's no good. How do you do, Mr. Hopkins? You know, I was rehearsing it. So I got a bit lonely. So I thought I should put on the TV for a bit of company. So it was about lunchtime. Put on BBC One. Breaking news, the lunchtime news came on. Breaking news today, in a fit of rage, the news anchor said, the actor Anthony Hopkins attacked a very famous photographer. He destroyed all his equipment and sent him back to the magazine. I think it was Vogue magazine, devastated, traumatized, you know, etc., etc. So I thought, shit. I called up the magazine and I said, is there only one Anthony Hopkins? And they said, yeah. And I said, he's on the news right now. I said, the guy's a monster. I don't want to do this. I said, you've set me up. So all the bravado went out the window. Suddenly I'm confessing, you know, I'm a student, I don't know anything. And then they said, this is why we never give young people a break, because they bend under pressure, fold under pressure like origami. They said, if you pull out of the shoot this late in the game, we will make sure you will never have another job in the business. Your reputation will be destroyed. So I thought, okay, I can't get out, I have to do it. So the next day I went to the shoot, and it was at the Grosvenor House Hotel in Mayfair, very posh hotel, okay? I'd never been anywhere that posh before. And we were sent up to the suite where they do all the press for the movie, because he was promoting the movie. So I set up, and I've never met publicists before, and I'd never been exposed to the business. So I was terrified. The door opens, and in walks Hannibal Lecter Incorporated, right? And he sits in front of me, and I picked up the camera, and he gives me this look, and something happened to me. I didn't know what it was at the time. I now know what it is. It's called a panic attack, right? Has anyone in this room ever had one? It is terrifying, right? Suddenly you're a stranger to yourself. You don't know your own body. Your voice is not your voice. Your hands start to shake. Breathing problems. I don't know if you had that one. I suddenly felt my heart banging against my rib cage, and I actually thought I'm having a heart attack. So I dropped the camera, clutched my chest, and I said, cardiac arrest, and I fainted. So there was a big kerfuffle. The coffee and tea was knocked over. The cookies were knocked over. The press officer for the movie was going, oh, not again. We only got over yesterday. Now we're in another one. And Anthony Hopkins, I think, probably said, I didn't touch him. I didn't do anything. So they called a doctor. Doctor in the hotel comes, the medic. And I kind of come round where he's doing this on my cheek, and I'm lying on the floor, and the doctor's got the thing with the puffer doing this, and he's got his stethoscope on my heart, you know, and I look up and I see Anthony Hopkins, Hannibal Lecter leaning over me like this, and the doctor says, good God, young man, he said, there's nothing wrong with you. Your heart's fine, but I have never seen anyone so stressed in my career. He said, just calm down. So I look up beyond the doctor, and I see Hannibal Lecter like this. And, of course, I'm lying on my back. You can imagine, it's over. There is no comeback from here. there is no rebuilding your reputation or your stature. You've lost absolutely everything. So I said, Mr. Hopkins, I need to be honest with you. I said, I'm a complete liar and a fraud. I said, I lied to get this job. I told everyone I'm a professional when actually I'm just an art student. And I said, I've never met a famous person before. And I said, yesterday I was watching the news and you were on it. And I said, I dreamed of being a successful photographer, but I saw you attack a very famous photographer. And if you did that to him, I can't imagine what you're going to do to a student. So with your permission, this is not quite the job I thought it would be. You know, I thought it's going to be cool. I thought if I hang out with celebs, I'll become a celeb and I'll be finally cool. So I said, I'm quitting while I'm ahead. I'll do something else. So he says, get the boy to his feet. So the doctor helps me up like this and he says, come over here. So I nervously stepped closer like this and he says, give me a hug. He gave me a huge hug and a big, sloppy, juicy kiss on the cheek like Hannibal Lecter might have done. And then he says, did it not occur to you that I'm scared too? He said, look at me. I'm not Clark Gable or George Clooney. I'm an ordinary looking person. And he said, I'm filled with so many insecurities and struggles. And he said, I'm terrified of that camera. It magnifies all my fears. And he said, I regret what happened yesterday, but that famous photographer treated me with no kindness or respect. He treated me like I'm a thing instead of a person. He said, but you have been honest in front of me, and it's allowing me to be honest with you. He said, you pick up the camera, young man, and you finish the job you were born to finish. But together we make the picture. You need me as much as I need you. So I picked up the camera. I took one frame. I didn't die. Took another frame. Not so bad. And within 5 minutes, he's doing Marlon Brando impersonations, and I had him. And then I realized, if you want to reach out with the open hand of friendship, you have to go first. And that takes great courage. That is not easy. But the chances are that the person you're most scared of is at least as scared as you are. And I can tell you since that day, I have always reached out first with a hand of friendship with literally some of the most scary people in the world. And it's always opened a door to understanding the world around me. And it's not for me to judge. I'm not important enough to make a judgment. I have my opinions, but it's much more interesting to learn than to judge. So, be kind to people.
This has been so much more than I think any of us expected. Don't waste it, people. Don't waste it. This is magic. Thank you, Platon. We're open till 5, so you're free to come and meet Platon, go see the pop-up Humans of New Canaan show in the concourse. Thank you very much, everyone.
Huh? Oh, yeah.